Next chapter. Sorry for your eyes on that one. Hey, look, it's chapter 5, portfolios. All right. What's a portfolio? Like I said, some of this is going to be surface level. So we'll start light and get into it. This is the heart of showing off your skill and understanding. It's a curated collection of your best works, emphasis on best, that shows your ability and hopefully offers something unique that can only be gotten from you. This is where you want to flex, and oftentimes is the first thing a director or hiring manager will look at. And that's important. Your best work, and this is where you flex. Okay? It's going to be assumed always that what is in your portfolio is the apex of what you are able and capable of doing. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Your aim is to present a full picture of you as an artist and give an accurate idea of your skill set. This is the most important part of your application. If you are an art and you are doing an application, your resume is going to need to be part of it, but your portfolio is going to be the most important part. General portfolio tips. Try to keep your portfolio between 10 to 20 images. Now, again, this is a number that's going to vary depending on who you're talking to and so on and so forth. But a good average is between 10 and 20 and always impactful. The sweet spot tends to be around 14, but there's wiggle room here, and it's always subject to the whimsical preferences of any hiring manager, art director, or lead. There's going to be people you're going to ask on Twitch, and they're going to be like, 8, no more than 8. I can tell you, I had over 25. Try not to have too few images. That way you can be sure to show the range of your skills. In this case, less is not always more. I have hired somebody who had only 4 images in their portfolio. They were 4 outstanding images, and each one was very unlike the last. That was outstanding, but it was also an exception. Most people, you're going to want to have a bit more body of work. Also, if somebody's saying they only have 4 great pictures, that creates a different kind of conversation. These are all things you should be keeping in mind. Try not to have too many. Hey, I spelled 2 with 1 O too few, so pretend that it's spelled correctly. Images. You should take the approach of quality over quantity. Again, this is why it balances, and we're like, hey, maybe between. It's again, don't have too many, don't have too few. The idea is just don't bloat, right? If you have a character standing with a sword and it's a badass picture, don't put 5 more characters just standing there with a sword as badass pictures, because you're kind of repeating yourself. You want everything to have a reason to be there. This means it is subjective. There is no perfect number, and you want to find the best balance that highlights your ability. That's the first and foremost important thing here. If you end up going over the amount, but it's all badass work, that's going to be better than having 5 pictures that are fine. General portfolio tips. Don't put images that are too similar. This is the badass sword guy I was talking about. Be selective. Remember, you're trying to show not only your skill, but your range. What you don't show, they will not know. This is a rule of thumb. Keep it in your head, repeat it, write on a paper, go to sleep with it at night. If you're not showing it, don't get pissy when you're like, they just don't understand how good I am at drawing spaceships that I don't put in my portfolio. Even if you have the skill and you haven't put it to paper, then, that's something to do, right? Get that down, put that in your portfolio. Portfolios also, and I'm going to go over this later, are a living entity, much like a resume. You can cycle it, update it, take things off, put things in at any time, including after you've submitted a portfolio to be looked at. It's fine. If you don't think it's some of your best, don't put it in there. Simple as. Shoving something into the portfolio for the sake of having more when it isn't a good showing of your ability is a mistake. Anyone who sees your portfolio will always assume everything in there is the best that you're capable of. I've run into this one a lot. I've talked about this one on previous streams a lot. People will go, I don't know what to put in here, and they'll have something they kind of like, just like a whatever doodle, and they'll be like, I put it in there. I'm like, why is this in here? Its quality is pretty low. And they're like, lol, I don't know. Take it serious, because if you're really looking for work, you're going to be judged, probably unfairly, on what's in your portfolio. So you need to make your best showing. Be intentional. Again, that's going to come up a lot. Intentional with what you do. Don't just throw whatever. Now, when you're making your portfolio, you can throw whatever and cycle it out and don't publish that portfolio yet. it's good to kind of judge. And again, this will be one of those cases where having somebody look at it helps. But you also have to somebody look at it that has the context of what you're looking for. A lot of portfolio reviews I've seen on Twitch and elsewhere, they're generalized, they're more helpful than they're not, but sometimes they're incredibly biased in a specific direction by somebody who's decided what they want the industry to be versus what it is. I'm trying to give you more generalized information that can be malleable and you can mold into the direction you want it to go. If you have great art that you might not see in every other artist portfolio, those would make a great fit. And that's a weird position that we'll get into a little bit later as well, because there's a nuance to making portfolios and you kind of have to play the game with them sometimes. I've actually not gotten a job because I had stuff that wasn't in other people's portfolios. That's going to depend on the director you're working with, and that's a whole can of beans. If only someone was doing a talk about that kind of thing. Popular on Twitter does not mean good enough for use in a professional game dev job. It also doesn't mean it isn't. It's just a horrible metric to use. Basically, if you have something go viral on Twitter, it could be an outstanding piece of art you want in your portfolio, but it won't be outstanding because it went viral necessarily. So don't use performance on social media as a metric and a way to judge if something is good enough. That's the crossover between portfolio and social media is destructive for a lot of people. Avoid that. General portfolio tips. What kind of images? Don't use image trend memes. Avoid memes in general. Fan art can be good for a portfolio. It can show your ability to adapt to existing styles. Depending on the position, you will want to be careful of how much fan art you include. If a company has a strong house style, then avoid using fan art of their direct competitor. Not always true, but generally true. Let's look at the first one and address that first. Using image trend memes and memes. Some people have done this to good effect. A good example right now, and this will probably date the recording, is a color wheel meme where you take a color wheel and you illustrate fan art of characters that are red in the red section, orange in the orange section. Yellow would be like SpongeBob, blue would be Mega Man, etc., so on. That's cool, performs well on social media. The context is lost in a portfolio sense. And if you start seeing these show up in a lot of portfolios like we do, they start to just get ignored and it becomes a null set. There's no reason to have it there, and it does you no good. It also doesn't show that you have any personal expression to make. It just shows that you're kind of just adapting to a social media meme and not taking your portfolio very seriously. It's work you've done. It could be great work, but it's a huge gamble. I'm not going to say it won't work. I'm going to say you probably shouldn't do it. Memes also date themselves as well and kind of offer less. I redrew a Sailor Moon drawing. Yeah, it looks good, but you just kind of did this thing that everybody else did and it already existed. Maybe just do a really badass fan art of Sailor Moon instead. You know what I mean? Because people will pick up on memes and they're going to go, oh, this person's portfolio is just full of social media memes. Like, they're not even really taking this serious. It's a huge gamble. I'd recommend not to do it. Fan art, you'll find that people online will argue both ways about this, including professionals. They'll be like, oh, using fan art just shows you aren't creative at all. Using only fan art is the best way to do it, and so on. Realistically, it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, if you're applying to World of Warcraft, having WoW fan art is like the number one thing you want to do. You want to show that you can do the thing that they're doing, right? Also, if you're not, sometimes it helps to show you have different styles, and showing that you can adapt to a house style by doing the house style of an existing property is also good. Just make sure you're not just tracing existing stuff, because that's going to show you don't know how to do it, which will hurt you. Fan art is generally fine. You just don't want to have a whole portfolio full of fan art unless it's specifically of the property that you're looking to join. And if you're going in a concept capacity, you may want to just show some original stuff, even in that style, just to show that you have the creative prowess to concept, because concepting is a very much idea-oriented skill set that's required, not just art. So there you go. If you do fan art of game projects, do not use official logos. Companies do not like this, and it can give the impression you're trying to pass your art off as official work. So something you'll see a lot now, here we are, November of 2024, for the purposes of recording. is you're going to find a lot of people will do art dumps, still on ArtStation, social medias, et cetera, so on, when an update or an expansion or a game comes out. And the way that they group these together, not just by artist postings, is by putting the official company and project logo on their work. A lot of times people will do fan art and they will put the official logo on there so it gets grouped up with drops or just in general. We had this on Hearthstone a lot. People would be like, I'm doing a Hearthstone card back, because either they want to work there or they just want to try the style, and they'll put official Hearthstone logos on that. And that's bad, especially if you're wanting to apply to places. Some places don't care, but many places do. And they're like, you're trying to pass this off as you work here. And you got to remember that a lot of people who work in a company, they're going to take pride that they work there, that they can do this, and you're just kind of going and jumping that gun. It's a bad look, won't always hurt you, but it will hurt you far more than it will ever help you, so avoid that. Try to include work that can tell a visual story. If you can tie work to a specific experience or evoke an emotion, this can set you apart. The example of this is taking multiple characters from a world and some props from that world as well and setting up a scene. Storytelling is an interesting thing when it comes to illustration, and it does overlap with concept art. You want to kind of show that you can do more than just a character that stands in a white void sometimes, because that will evoke a better response from people who see your work. You can still get the thing that you're trying to show of a character in a void with more than that, but it's hard to get the more than that from a character just in a void. You can include both. This is always an option. Studies shouldn't be included in a portfolio. Oddly enough, a little more, there's a bit more contention over that than I would expect personally. When you're doing studies, generally like, I'm doing gestural studies, I'm looking at hands and I'm drawing hands. I looked at a bunch of poses and I redrew the poses. You're studying to learn, and now you're putting that in your portfolio as the best work you're capable of doing. It's sending mixed messages, and it's not very useful. Like, most people have done studies. It's not going to tell us much about what you're doing. Keep that to your social media, keep that to your personal stuff. The value of showing studies is arguable, and this is not really the place for that. But I will say that a portfolio is also not a place for that. So don't do it. And general portfolio tips: what kind of images? When you post finished concepts or illustrations, be sure to include progress drawings, early designs, and sketches in your same posts. We'll get to what some of that formatting looks like in a little bit here. But directors will want to know your process of arriving at finals. And with Gen AI being a thing, it will help to remove suspicion. Again, we are in November of 2024, in case the AI apocalypse eats us all freaking live in the next couple of years, which I don't predict it will. I just want to say that when you're showing your portfolio, it is immediately under suspicion of being Gen AI all the time. Try and remove some of that suspicion, right? Directors, especially in concept jobs, leads, are going to want to show how you arrived at the thing that you did. What was your color exploration? What was your form exploration? Did you try 10 outfits before you arrived at this one? What's your thought process? Because especially if you're working in concept, they're going to need to see your process and be able to give feedback. And if you show what those areas look like, that's going to help. So you can generally show like your finished drawing and then sketches and process below it. If you're posting on ArtStation, you're formatted to do that. Depending on what you're doing your portfolio on as far as presentation, personal sites, just arrange it so that this can be one post and those are available below it. That generally works. And showing your process, yes, I know Gen AI can create fake processes or whatever, but you're trying to put distance between you and any suspicion. And the better your work is, the more suspicion there will be cast upon it. Unless you're on Twitter, where everybody just believes everything they say. But that's not what this is. This means you can include within your process drawings your unsuccessful ideas. And this is important too. The ideas you decided to discard in favor of the final product. Showing you're willing to experiment and pivot is particularly important for concept art jobs. Workflow is the name of the game. This is a big one. A lot of people have been taught, don't show your unsuccessful things, like only show the good thing, blah, 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 blah. You want to show that you can iterate. You want to show that as much as you can find good ideas, you can identify ideas you don't want to use. And also that's the basis for a conversation about why you didn't want to use them, which is great for an interview. Why didn't you choose the pink dress? Why did you choose the blue pants? Oh, I see you went with shape explorations. What was your intention behind this? And you can even write those down, like, oh, I didn't like this because of this, and I went with this because my intention was to get a more aggressive feel for this character that leads in their personality that would hopefully come across at a distance, that kind of thing. Lean into the failures, and quite frankly, sometimes fabricate them. If you're doing a portfolio, you can just be like, oh, this is a cool idea that I know I'm not going to use, but I'll show it as an exploration. It's okay. Totally okay to do that. If you have only adult work, or a bulk of your work was not safe for work, do not put this into your portfolio. Don't do it. Instead, clear that fact with a potential employer if you want to offer more than what is in your portfolio, or if they ask. I went over this earlier, but don't put it in there. Nobody wants to see, boobs and whatever shoved in their face in a professional. Okay, plenty of people do, but generally you don't want that to happen. Don't simply drop a link to a collection of not safe for work. Don't do unannounced not safe for work drops. That's not good. If they agree to see it, censor it in a way that shows your artistic ability but isn't tossing porn at someone. I don't really run into this very much. I run into the questions, but I've never really run into somebody just dropping adult work into their portfolio. I've seen it a couple times, but never when applying for places I've worked at. Just don't do it. Remember, this is a professional environment. Don't get too casual. Don't get weird about it. It's not that porn is bad. Porn is great. It's just there's a time and a place. And you want to assume a professional, safe for work environment at all times until given the signal otherwise. So don't put people in that position. Make sure you're cleared to post the work that you show. Don't post anything still under NDA unless you get signed clearance from a current or previous employer to do so. Now, cards on the table. Can I get more water? Sorry. A lot of people in interviews and whatnot will still show NDA work, even though they're not cleared to do so. Sometimes this happens. It's just, I'm warning you that if certain employers find out that you are sharing this with other companies, you are going to be in some of the deepest legal shit you could imagine. Don't risk it, is my official statement on this. Be aware of what the consequences are if you do. There are plenty of cases in which I've been like, oh, this is all under NDA. I worked for this company and my time has ended there and I want to show this to somebody else. And I've just asked like, hey, I'm looking for a new job. We can have them sign NDA too if they want or whatever. But am I clear to just show this? And most of the time they're like, yeah, just only show it to them because they're professionals and don't worry about it. It's, mileage is going to vary, but be aware of this. NDAs on socials are not taken very seriously, I've noticed. And I've seen firsthand what happens when people get smacked with the legal team for breaching NDAs. And it's not pretty, and it has long-lasting consequences. How to display your work. Social media is not a portfolio. Let me read that again, but slower. Social media is not a portfolio. Don't link to the media tab on your Twitter or your Tumblr, even if you aren't shitposting. It's unprofessional and just generally a very bad idea. Don't do it. Curate a portfolio. Be purposeful with it. Don't just throw shit on Twitter or Blue Sky and go, this is it. Just look through this. Like, don't. Nobody wants to do that. You can use sites like ArtStation, Kara, or Personal Site, and more. So long as you can create a curated gallery that's also your contact information readily available, you should be good. Some people use Insta. I'm not going to touch that, but, just anywhere you can make a gallery site collected that isn't on a well-known ruled argument platform, shall we say. If the portfolio is not public, be sure to include the password wherever you post a link to your portfolio. A lot of people do this with private sites. They password protect the work because they're like, well, some of this is not for public eyes or whatever. Most hiring managers will not take the time to ask you if you don't provide a password, and it's annoying and insulting to send them a link. And then I've had this happen. I have asked, but then I'm also like, why? You're best off to always have a public portfolio. Honestly, every step you put between you and somebody seeing your work, you're going to start cutting off a percentage of people who will ever take the time to do that, including hiring managers, which are becoming less reliable to have patience with people as time's gone on. I will say the caliber of hiring manager is lowering over time. Don't make your portfolio a zip file of images unless this is specifically requested. Make an easily accessible gallery so hiring managers and directors can view your work effortlessly. Always put your contact info so it's visible at the top of every page in your portfolio. So this is basically the mirror upside down version of your resume, right? At the top of your resume, you want to link to your portfolio. Top of your portfolio, you want to link to your contact info and possibly your resume. This is what you should be doing. Always make these linked to each other. They can cross-reference. You want your info and contact as readily available as possible because, again, just assume everybody who's looking to hire doesn't have time for you. Your portfolio gallery should be simple and easy to navigate. Flashy transitions or taxing websites are a pain in the ass and most spelled wrong. Hey man, there's like 400 something slides in here. So when I have misspellings, I may take myself to task, but please be patient with me. Most won't waste their time trying to get through it. Also, it will be hell on mobile, which is a way that many industry folks share portfolios. More and more small screens are how people share stuff with each other. Links through mobile, you're lucky if it's on an iPad half the time. So just assume that it's web friendly on mobile. And you're also going to want to avoid like 30 entry pages and a whole bunch of CSS crazy slow transitions that bog a browser down because they're just looking to get straight to your work. If you want to have a personal site that's flashy and cool, do it. I'm all for it. But when it comes to professional portfolio display, maybe miss it, Speaking of which, you want your art portfolio viewable even on a phone, which actually at this point should just be on a phone, not even, because it's most likely going to come up on a phone, and oftentimes people will load it on a phone in an interview and talk to you about it rather than having it on a projector or something. Presentation does a lot of heavy lifting. Organize your art or concepts in an interesting way. This sucks, honestly, but it's also true. And that's why it sucks, because you can have great art, but if it's presented in a shitty way, sometimes people won't even look through it. And I think that blows, personally. I will always look through it. I'm not going to go like, I'm going to not hire an amazing artist because their website's kind of, arranged poorly, as long as I can get to the art. But I will say a lot of people won't hire you because of that, because they'll be like, these other people look so much more professional. Especially now when people are like hyper judging artists. It's going to be one of the criteria you're judged on. It's just how it is. Write a summary to go with the images you post that contextualizes them. This is very helpful. Help folks understand what they're looking at, the purpose, and what was done to arrive at the finished product. This is also a chance to credit your collaborators on projects, which looks very professional, and it's just a nice thing to do. Tell me about your concept. What was it for? What was the timeline for the project? Any kind of information like that, if I'm excited about a concept and I can get more, might make me even more excited about you. That's just a really good thing to do. And a lot of people don't do it. They're just like, here's a picture, here's a picture, here's a picture, here's a picture. Create professional looking thumbnails that show the best quality. I'm going to have examples for these, don't worry. That show the best qualities for images in your portfolio gallery. If it's key art and concepts in the post, you can fashion both of these into the thumbnail. So you can catch a hiring manager's eye and others can see what they're clicking on in advance. This also becomes a problem. Like I've seen this a lot on ArtStation too, and I've been guilty of it, where the thumbnail shows like a face, but I click into it and it's like 30 pictures of the most crazy cool illustrations I've ever seen. And I never knew that one thumbnail was a whole bunch of images. There's something you can do called bucketing, which we'll get into shortly, that can kind of solve this. Understanding what you are aiming for with your portfolio. If you're applying to a character design job, try not to have 90% environment illustrations. If you want to have all of these different types, but still apply for targeted positions, you can. Bucket your portfolio. Wow, predicted the future. Into sections. This means grouping things together by the project or the type. It makes navigation easier, looks more professional as well. This is also a way to sneak in extra images since they'll be nested in their respective bucketed sections. What does this mean? It means instead of having like, oh, these are all my pictures of microphones and they're all in one post. You have a section that has a thumbnail that's like microphones. You click in that and it's a subsection of your portfolio that has like 20 microphone pictures. This way you can have like 10 bucketed sections, but each bucket section can have 15 images. Now you've got 150 images instead of 10 to 20. And if people really like them, now you've got a lot more bang for your buck. It's a way to kind of circumvent the image limitation if you have a lot of stuff to show. I've done this. I think I have 100 and something images in my portfolio right now, which is a bit much, but because they're bucketed, it looks interesting and it kind of works. So if somebody clicks into Hearthstone, some of those look the same. So, you know, they click into Hearthstone and then your individual post can still have what works for it. But that Hearthstone entry is just one bucketed list. I can show you that later. Above everything, keep your portfolio clean and organized. Do it. You have to. And it sucks because it takes extra time. I hate that, but you need to do it. And I hate saying that, but it's true. Do's and don'ts. Don't include types of art you would not want to do as a job. Do you hate concepting weapons? Don't include it. This is surface level stuff, but it misses a lot of people. People will be like, oh, I don't want to do architecture, but I have to include it. No, you don't. There's no rule that says you have to do architecture in your portfolio. Well, it's the only thing I have. Then do something else and replace it in your portfolio. You're going to have to put the work in. Bottom line is, if you're presenting in your portfolio, you're also telling everyone, I would love to do this for a job. And I've seen people get offers for stuff that is in their portfolio and then complain to me about later, going like, I can't believe I keep getting asked to do this stuff. And it's like, you told them you wanted to. So be mindful. Don't just go with your first portfolio iteration. Take the time to go through it and consider the impact and the arrangement, make adjustments over time. It also can help to just throw a bunch of stuff in there, adjust it, move it around, look at it the next day, have someone else look at it, look through your art, make some new stuff, put it in there, take some things out, bucket differently, change your thumbnails. You can always change it. It's not set in stone. You can also have multiple portfolios. Don't include low resolution images that look like garbage. I've seen this happen by accident more than I've seen it done on purpose, but double check, load up everything in your portfolio, pretend you're a hiring manager and go through it. And if you only have a super low resolution of something good, just don't include it. Do put your best and most relevant images first. There's arguments as to how to do this. This is a little less set in stone. I've just found this to be the most effective. Generally, people are like, oh, put your best images at the beginning and at the end. Well, that's relative to depending on your display. But I found that there's no reason not to put your most impactful stuff at the top, which will be seen first. I have seen and worked with a lot of leads who won't look past like the third or fourth image anyway. So keep that in mind. Realistically, everything in your portfolio should be awesome anyway, but your favorite or most impactful stuff, especially if like, say I'm going to use Blizzard as an example a lot because that's just one that people know. If you're like, I want to apply for WoW, you're going to put your most impactful WoW related stuff at the top, right? Because that's what you want them to see. You don't want them to see like, oh, this is my Cuphead stuff and this is my like real life studies, and then your stylized WoW stuff's at the bottom and they might even have to scroll to see it. Do assume everyone who views your portfolio will be technically incompetent and impatient. Just assume that anyone who looks at it doesn't know what they're doing and is an asshole who hates you. This is a great rule because what you want to do is you want to make sure that if anyone's impatient and whatnot, it's easy to navigate and easy to understand and easy to find and kind of cool enough that they wouldn't just disregard it for other reasons. Technically incompetent is important because if you're nesting and hiding things beyond buckets, a lot of people really don't know how to navigate it and they will just be like, ah, fuck it, I shouldn't have to look for this. And you're always starting at a negative with most managers when you apply because they're already at a point where they're going to judge you. They're like, this person thinks they're good enough for the position, huh? Let's take a look. I've been on teams where, the approach is, oh, cool, let's take a look. This is nice. And it's a good faith situation, but oftentimes it's not. They're just like, let's take a look and see if you're good enough. And they're like, I can't find this thing. Fuck it. I'm not going to even look. And that's it. That's it. That's the whole process. So not always that way, but hedge your bets, right? There's no reason not to be more prepared. Do make certain your resume is accessible from your portfolio. Mentioned this earlier. Always cross those two over. You always want your resume at the top of your portfolio if you can, or at least in a easily accessed location that's noticeable without having to scroll, and always have your portfolio linked to the top of your resume. Additional thoughts. You don't need to have only one portfolio. You can always fashion different portfolios aimed at different jobs and companies, and it is highly recommended to tailor portfolios in this way. Highly, highly, highly recommended to do it this way. If you're applying for a really hyper stylized job, you make a portfolio of that. This other one's sci-fi or hyper realistic and wants photo bashing or whatever, okay, you're applying for that with a different portfolio. You don't need to overlap these two, okay? You can, and you can have a generalist portfolio, but just keep in mind, there's no reason not to fashion a portfolio specifically for what you're aiming for. Your portfolio is not set in stone. You can always remove or add something at any time. Strive to keep your portfolio a solid representation of your work. Just did a new kick-ass painting that would go great in there, put it in. Does it do a better job of showing specific abilities than something already in there? Replace the old one with your new one. Do not let your portfolio stagnate when you have opportunities to make it better. And this is key too, because something you're going to find about the studio environment is it's volatile, extremely volatile. So be ready and update your portfolio as you go. Ask folks to look through and give you their impressions. Check with your art teacher, other artists, friends, opinions who you trust. They are your first audience, and they might spot something missing or something you might be better off omitting. Don't just get in your head with it. It sucks. You know, it's all on you, and you're like, you're really fashioning something for like a rainbow gamut of different people. You never really know who's going to look at it. So it's real easy to get stuck in your head and go, is this right? Is this optimal? I don't know. So just get some other opinions. There is no perfect answer, but you can definitely tailor it towards the most likely outcome that's positive for you. There we go. There's no perfect way. Hey, it's like I wrote this. To make your portfolio, different folks and companies look for different things that sometimes conflict with what other folks and companies are looking for. You're going to find this a lot too. If you talk to hiring managers and stuff, people like me, whatever, you're going to find that there's conflicting information. It's going to get confusing. You're like, wait, but Axer said this, and Cami said this, and so-and-so said that, and so-and-so said that. They can all be true at the same time. Different experiences, different companies, different teams, right? So just kind of pull what makes sense for you and generally feel out what seems to overlap the most and go with that. It is a follow your heart area, but I'm trying to inform you a bit better so you can hopefully understand the shape that your heart takes with this. Portfolio examples. How about those? Bucketing images. Putting images into buckets is great for organization. That can look like this. This is bucketing, okay? So see the top left is environmental work. Now this is ArtStation. I know ArtStation is pro-Gen AI, and that's really a shitty fucking take. But it is a usable portfolio site example that you can fashion your own off of, or use theirs, or use something else. Just for portfolio. So bucketing here, you can see on the upper left, this is environmental work. This is off my portfolio. When you bucket, you have your main image thumbnail, which is this big one. I've cut it into 3. And then you have the next 3 images in order. So this is the first one in order, and then the next. So by bucketing it, it's all environment. It tells you how many images are in there. So already there's 23 just in that, right? But it's one entry. And you can also show thumbnails of other ones because it's bucketed. So like on Hearthstone here, I have 3 different thumbnails that show, hey, they're not all the same thing, even though it's all Hearthstone, right? And so bucketing is a really good way to show that there's different or similar things in there and showcase a grouping of items without them taking up a huge amount of space. Bucketing is going to be your friend. So this uses image previews to show varied works. I'm highlighting areas here in case you didn't notice. Bucket categories, they're named. You can name these whatever you want. Amount of images in the bucket is shown. This is convenient by way of ArtStation, because otherwise someone might be like, oh, there's only 3-4 images in there. I don't know. Nope, there's 23. Buckle up. The main thumbnail draws interest. That's what you want. And thumbnails are very, very important because if it's not showing what's in there, nobody's going to click through. I've seen ones where it just shows like the arm of a person because they just auto-generated or something, and then you click in and it's this awesome, beautiful picture of a character riding like a horse or whatever. And you're like, I never would have known that. Projects have logo on main thumb for the bucket. This is a good one, right? So if you're working on Destiny, you're going to have the Destiny logo, and that's going to let you know what that bucket is containing. It also looks just really professional, and you can do this if you don't work on official things. Like if you have your own project that you make a logo for it, now it looks more professional. Again, though, if you were doing Hearthstone work unofficially and it's just fan work, don't put the Hearthstone logo. But if you did contract work with them, put that thing on there. In fact, they'll provide you with the PNG for it. A lot of companies will do that. So ask if they don't provide. Image thumbnails. Employing good thumbnails is great for presentation. That can look like this. Hey, look, I handpicked some cool thumbnails. They're very different, and that's on purpose to kind of give you an idea of what cultivating a thumbnail that might grab attention and decently show what's inside would look like. There's a clear subject. That's a real important one. If you can't at a glance even tell what it is, that's a problem. Project name for post is present. Again, we already went over that, but that's pretty good. This bottom left one is super clean. Professional, clean presentation. They cut this thumbnail up, right? But they cut it at an angle that suits what's being shown in the thumbnail and looks really nice. That kind of thing goes a long way. Really, thumbnails are more impactful than they should be. I've seen careers made and broken off of just thumbnail presentation because sometimes people just won't click through when it's messy. The subject is framed well. You really do want you want to frame it. It's art. It's composition. A great way to show multiple related images and subjects contained in the post. This one's cut up. Same with the one in the middle. Same with the one on the right. You don't have to show only one image. You can always cut it up. Just do it in an intentional way that's not so weirdly detailed that no one can tell what it is. Image arrangement. Presenting concepts in an interesting way is important. That can look like this. So these are just some examples. That bottom one is from our very own Cami. And what you want to do is you really kind of want to make sure that you're not just showing an image on white space or whatever. That used to be fine. Nowadays, you want to arrange it in an interesting way, give it a backer, kind of artistically display it, because so many people are doing that now that when you don't do it, it stands out. And when you do it, it's just considered what's expected. So there's some organized professional arrangement, right? It's using the space, it looks appealing, you're showing what's there, and it feels like you were intentional with the placement. The name and project title are present. So if you're working on a project, even if it's just a personal project and you have name or logos and stuff, put that stuff on there. Make it look nice. You know what I mean? If it's experience from stuff you have worked on, obviously, do it like this. Sensible image progression. So on that top one, you have, the turnaround ortho, right? With the call outs on the sides, silhouetting and little individual information, but it flows in a way that makes sense. You're not like, oh, there's part of the turnaround in the middle and then part of the turnaround on the right, and in between there's some faces and then an arm call out, and it doesn't make sense. Everything's kind of organized in a way that you can parse what's there, it feels good, and it looks like a nice little display of what the designs are. So you can full screen this thing and really look at, oh, how did they present the information? Does the art look nice? All of this, that looks good. Clear and easy to understand. There's really no confusion about this overall. That's some UI UX framing down on the bottom and button arrangement and a character concept on the top with callouts. It's clean, it's clear, it's not jumbled, and it looks professional. This is just like with the portfolio thumbnails. You're going to want to take the time to present it in a appealing fashion. Otherwise, other people will, and you will see someone get a job with worse art and design than you because they were better at arranging their stuff than you. Not always the case, but I've seen it happen, and it really disappointed me. Concept ideations. Presenting concepts with ideations is important. That can look like this. So We have some examples. AFK journey, my goodness, the art on that is so clean all the time. Cami again here, in the middle, and we've got some examples that I can go through here. You can have sketches and ideations on the same page. They don't always have to be separate, right? You can do the key art and the concept on the same image and organize it in a fashion that presents it really, really cleanly and gets the information across. So you can see the ideations that, like on the card back for Hearthstone there, that weren't used on the left, but still are like, oh, neat explorations. And then you can see the execution of the one that was chosen in the middle, and then the animated final on the right. That's actually animated on the post, but I didn't put the animation in here, just so you know. You can have the ideations separate from the image post. Always fine. These ones on the bottom were from the same post, 2 different images. The final on the right with the exploration on the left. So basically the final was posted, and then below it on ArtStation, the left ones were posted. And that's totally fine to do that way. It's just you really don't want to waste people's time, but you do want to make sure that those are visible. So don't have the image take up the full space and not scroll on a reasonably sized monitor. Explorations can be simple black and white sketches. Honestly, sometimes people forget this. They try to only show clean work or finalized work. They want all the explorations to look as cleaned up as the final. You don't need to do that. Sometimes, like look at the AFK journey one on the upper left even. It's just some sketchy line art, but it gets the idea across. They understood what they were doing, and that's good. Show iterations and unused ideas. Do it. We talked about that earlier, but that's what it looks like, right? And it can be messier than this. What was your explorations that you didn't go with? What were you thinking? And then you can contextualize that through text as well, or conversations and interviews. Why didn't you choose these? What was your intention? What was the goal, and why do you feel that the one that you chose executed on that? That's going to be an opportunity for you to show your experience and your intention. Post the final work above the iterative design, explorations, and sketches in your post. Always post the final first, because if they just see the doodles and they don't scroll down, they might think the doodles is the final. Just good business to do it that way. Things to avoid. Try to avoid doing things that look like this. So just to be clear, I took Cami and my work and fucked it up because I didn't want to make fun of anybody else's posts, because I felt really bad looking for like examples that were bad. I could find them, but I didn't want to use them because I think that's really mean-spirited. So I crapped on our own work on purpose. These aren't real crops, by the way. I did this. I made bad examples on purpose. Bad crop or unclear subject in thumbnail. That's that top left one. Like, okay, there's some grass spot and then part of a building and then a rooftops cut off. What is this? That's really weird. Thumbnail uses official logo on fan art post. This was not official work, and I put a Hearthstone logo on it to be an asshole. You wouldn't want to do that. Again, that's not official work. Bad move, Peter. Disorganized random sketch layouts. Look at all this white space and complete lack of cohesion on these sketches here. Why were the explorations posted this way and then put in a portfolio? This is supposed to be your best work. If this is what I can expect, then that's probably going to be worse. Because remember, everybody who looks at a portfolio is going to assume your work in company is probably going to be a little worse, because this is your best of the best. Messy title. Artwork placed without design or care. What were you thinking? Look at this. Just enemies phase 1. Some people won't even be able to read that. And then they're just kind of plopped around on a solid background. No organization, not even an attempt to try and make it look nice. Super low resolution downsized image. Hey, look, that's the full size of that image. It probably looked pretty cool at one point, but we've ruined it forever. So, things to avoid. These seem obvious, but you get versions of this a lot. So just be mindful. Nothing needs to be perfect, but if you can easily get rid of the silly mistakes or spend that extra time to organize your work. For me, this is probably the most difficult step, I'll be honest, because I really enjoy doing the designs and doing the work, and I hate having to arrange them and pretty it up and make a backer or whatever, but it's going to really help you out, and it's going to make your portfolio sing a lot more on key. Give your portfolio love. Aww. It can't be stressed enough that your portfolio will be your lifeline to getting work and is the most important part of presenting yourself as a potential employee. This is absolutely true. Work on it over time. Give it the attention it deserves. Because if you don't, you're going to regret it. Hey, look, it's Q&A time. Now is the time for any questions you may have. I know that was a lot. It's kind of a simple bit. I iterated it over and over again. We'll check the recording after this Q&A. Let's look at the questions. Dine says, this may likely get covered before the Q&A. There are multiple preferred methods of portfolio sharing, like a hyperlink to the site, printed if doable, mostly PDFs through email. I had multiple teachers with different answers on the best delivery system when it comes to giving your portfolio to a company for context. Honestly, you really want to just kind of link to it if you can. And if you give it an email, just give it a link. Most people are going to expect a link to your portfolio at this point. Like I said, if you were to group everything up in a PDF or whatever, you can, but that's hard to share. Most people can share a link. And that's also why, like I said, you really want it to kind of be mobile friendly and organized in a clean way. You don't really want to zip file or PDF group things unless they specifically ask for that. It's just not what's expected. Anytime that I've been with a company, and I've been with a lot of companies, and we've gotten like a PDF grouping or a zip file, I've had somebody on the team go, just skip that one. Just skip it. They would have to, at that point, you're basically going, I need to have so much better work that it's worth it for people to put up with this. And it's a small thing, right? But really, there's just no reason not to. If you want to hedge your bets, right? Have a nice gallery and then put stuff in a PDF in case somebody for some reason really wants it all in a PDF or whatever. Sometimes that can help if people want to print it out, but usually people just do a screen print of the things that they want. I mean, they did that with my art test at Blizzard. They printed it out and like showed me my art test in print form in the conversation, which scared the hell out of me, but it ended up being a positive. I just didn't realize it. But even that was just, I posted that up and linked it. So something to consider. But again, same with resume. If they give you a direction on how to display it, always adhere to what the direction is. So if they're like, yeah, convert this stuff and put it all in a PDF, then I guess do it. But I've never seen that anymore. Most people have just gone into, you're going to have a portfolio where you expect a link to your portfolio. Can you go into the conflict between showing only your best work in your portfolio and including the unsuccessful ideas in your portfolio? So basically what I mean by unsuccessful ideas is in the exploration phase. So you're still going to show your best in that, like the final that you're showing is something you're really proud of and it's great. But when you're showing beneath that or as parts of your sketches or explorations, you'd go, oh, well, this was a clothing design I didn't like, or this was a creature design I didn't use, but I explored in this direction. So it's not really conflicting. It's more like this was how I arrived at this great best piece of work. And that process showing that is important. So most people will usually go, oh, I have a green suit that I designed for this character, and their exploration is, this is the sketch I did of the suit before I finalized it. And it's more like you want to show the exploration of what other suits did you try before you arrived at this one, and why did you pick it? And that's what I mean by like your unsuccessful ideas, the ones you didn't go with, the ones you're like, this might be cool, but not for this project, or this might be neat, but I found something I thought was neater. Which is really kind of like, then once you work in a place, it's the stuff you don't want to show. It's just like an aside. Like if game devs ever show like, you know this character you love? Well, here was the ideas we didn't use. Then everybody on Twitter goes, oh, missed opportunity. We should have done that. Just show that shit in your portfolio. Because that's what people are going to want to see. Chris says, a golden rule in animation demo reels and video portfolios is when in doubt, take it out. Meaning if you are doubting any part of a portfolio piece at all, it should be removed. Does that hold true with art portfolios? Yes. Because in demo reels, the guiding principle is your reel is only as strong as your weakest piece. That is a good general rule for art portfolios across board, including VFX portfolios, UI portfolios, designs, any kind of visual design. If you think it's weak, and you know it's weak, especially, don't put it in. Don't be like, maybe someone won't notice. Dude, these people are going to be scrutinizing your work more than anyone in your entire life, including yourself. And if they're not, lucky you. So always take your weak stuff out if you think that it's weak. And again, ask other people too, because sometimes you'll be like, "This is it. This is the sauce," and then someone else is going to be like, "Ha, it's shit," and you're gonna be like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should rethink that." So at least you'll have some food for thought. Elaine says, "Can you implement brief time-lapse videos to showcase your process while working on a picture in your portfolio?" You can. Many people do, actually, and that's a good point. Just make sure they're not taxing, and make sure that they're to the point, right? Don't make them take too long. Sometimes people will just do process GIFs because of this. They'll be like, "This was the sketch. This is when I started to adjust it. This was the value. This was the whatever," or like, anything like that. But yeah, process videos for 2D art is totally fine. 3D, same way. Especially with 3D, if you want to show how you solved a certain issue with the model that you're doing, or like this was the high poly and this is how I retopoed or whatever. It's always a good idea to show what you think is pertinent. Again, just be intentional, right? Don't just show it for the sake of showing it if you could have just showed it in a still image. Is it pertinent to bring something like a tablet or a computer to use for showcase of your portfolio? You can. A lot of people just generally will have their phone. Like, I'm assuming you mean in an interview, and they'll just be like, they'll pull it up on their phone or whatever. That's always nice, just in case somebody in the interview has no equipment and they're like, "Oh, well, in your portfolio, I think there was a piece," and you're like, "Oh, hold on, I can pull it up for you and we can discuss it." Like, that's a nice back pocket kind of thing to have. More than likely, if they want to discuss it, they'll have it already, but definitely be prepared. I think that that's a really good approach. As a concept artist, entry level, should my portfolio be generalist or specialist? So that's going to go back to chapter 1. I hope you remember it, because I'm not gonna. No, I'm just kidding. Chapter 1, I was like, you're gonna want to kind of have an idea of what you want, right, before you start applying. And if you're a concept artist entry level, whether you're a generalist or a specialist is going to depend on where you're applying. Studios tend to want specialists a bit more. Smaller studios want generalists, but that's not always true. So it's more, what are you aiming for? Is what your portfolio should be. Because if you're showing a generalist, then a lot of specialist jobs are going to kind of look past you. But if you're showing a specialist and they want a generalist, then they're going to be like, "I don't know if you have the chops." So you're going to want to kind of guide that context. You're going to want to provide the images that support what you're looking for. What I like to do is, and I kind of mentioned this in the chapter 1, which is the T pose, where you have a wide range, like a generalist range, but you go really deep and specialize in one thing, is identify if you have that. If you're like, "Oh, I'm really, really good at illustration, but I like doing concept and I do some 3D and I do whatever," then you can show some generalists and then really focus on that specialized area where you're like, I'm neck deep in illustration or concept, which tends to be. And then within concept, you could be like, "I specialize in characters and creatures versus environments," or whatever. So that's how you'd want to kind of lead that conversation visually. Minigendo says, "In a game dev context, are portfolios relevant for non-art jobs? Would a developer also need a portfolio of some kind?" Well, yeah, usually there's like a design portfolio for designers, programmers are going to have to show material, but usually that has them solving a lot of problems in interviews and stuff like that. So I'm focusing mainly on art jobs here, but you will need to have some kind of portfolio usually for those jobs within game dev, at least in my experience. But I have seen us hire a programmer who didn't have a portfolio, but was like, "I've got a lot of experience. Let's test." So I think they kind of got in based off their credentials. I won't speak too heavily in that because, again, that's an area I have less experience of. But I have seen that, and I do know that designers tend to want to have kind of a grouping of things they've designed, examples of what they've worked on, which works as a portfolio. I've seen those take less refined versions, and those are not so reliant on like the visual thumbnail arrangements and ArtStation postings and stuff like that. Let's see. You assume it's always preferable to have a well-referenced folio by web search engines than a custom website like WordPress made more obscurely. So you're more likely to get a job by applying or presenting your portfolio in certain ways than you are for someone to just search your portfolio and find it. There are exceptions. ArtStation is one where if you post regularly, it can show up. But if you have a refined portfolio, you're not going to be posting in it anymore, which means it's not really going to get on people's radar. So the number one way you want to arrange a portfolio is you want to make something that you are going to present when you apply that is curated specifically by you. So in that context, being searchable is less important than being exactly curated the way that you want. You can overlap those if you want. I don't particularly recommend it. But, you know, if you're looking to be stumbled across, that oddly enough is more likely to happen on socials or like LinkedIn and stuff like that. But that's a whole other arena. And I do have 2 chapters on that later on. I think we're good on questions. So I'm going to keep going. I'm not stopping just yet.